Good afternoon, and welcome to Socrates Garrett Live. We're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi. Mississippi, the great state of Mississippi, where the weather is always good. I always say that here the air is a little bit cleaner and the grass is just a little bit greener down here in Jackson, Mississippi. In Mississippi in general, where we have the most fertile soil in the world. I don't make any excuses for that. I don't take that back at all. In Mississippi, we have the most fertile soil in the world. It's akin to the soil that you would have found on the Nile River. And you know, on the riverbanks, the soil is always more fertile because of the overflowing of the rivers when they bring the sediment and they bring all of the richness to the farmlands. So in Mississippi, we have what's called the Mississippi Delta. The Delta ranges all the way from Yazoo City all the way up to Clarksdale, Mississippi, and to the mouth of Tennessee. Where the land is flat, you can see hours and hours. You have no hills. It's just perfect for growing anything that you want to grow. The soil is dark in color and rich as it can be. You know, we always said the darker the soil, the richer the soil is and the ability to grow anything on it. And that's what we've been blessed with in the Mississippi Delta. So for years, the farmers there on the plantations were all on the Delta side, not so much on the hillsides of Mississippi where you get up around the Choctaw Nation and Kosciuszko and Grenada. In areas like that, you have too many hills and mountains. And well, we don't have any mountains, but we certainly have hills in that region. And so it wasn't as ideal for the growing of crops. And then down on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, it was always rich, fertile soil down there as well. So you follow the Mississippi River and you'll follow the best soil in the world. Now, why am I talking about soil today? Well, normally, we talk a lot about politics and we talk a lot about our culture and we talk about our history and things of that nature. And we'll get back to that, especially with the month of February being Black History Month. So we're going to spend ample time on dealing with those issues. But today it's on my heart to talk to you about the place that I grew up on the farm in Farm Haven, Mississippi. That's east of Canton and west of Carthage, somewhere in the middle, 16 miles east of Canton, 16 miles west of Carthage, where we had our own farm. So we got up every morning. When the sun rose, it didn't rise on us because we were already there waiting on it to come up. We'd have our soil tested, and we would be planting or we would be harvesting, we would be working with the ground. We had all of the tools that we needed. Some of you may have heard of a middle buster. Oh Lord, that was a plow that any young boy should have a day or two wrestling with, the middle buster. He'll come out of there thinking about work a little bit differently. And then we would get the ground ready and we would plow it all up, and then we mix all our fertilizers in, and we then would be ready to plant seed. But let's talk about this soil again, because it is the key. It is the foundation of life. Not only does all plants come out of the soil, all of our food comes from the soil. And according to Genesis, man himself came from the soil. So we need to understand soil and how it works. So today we're going to talk about it just a little bit. Now, my job here as the proprietor of this studio is to train hosts that are able to talk about soil and other things and what it means. We have a tremendous amount of farm activity in Mississippi, as I mentioned, with the Mississippi Delta being the base. You know, and we have a lot of Black farmers, of which you're always struggling, and which I'm always here to try to lend a helping hand. And so we're gonna talk about soil. Now, let's talk about it. In Mississippi, we have what's called Yazoo clay. Now, Yazoo clay is not good to plant anything on. It's an expansive clay, and it just wreaks havoc on foundations in homes and around homes and buildings because it contracts and it expands and it just keeps moving all of the time. And so on a foundation, it would crack a foundation. So it's no good for that. But if you're building a highway and you want the compaction there and you want to put an asphalt road on it, then the Yazoo clay works well. And we have to make certain that it has a certain amount of clay. It can't be silty sand. It can't be that kind of topsoil because it won't give you the compaction that you need. So soil has different applications, and so we take a look at it. You know, we want to know, what is the moisture content of the soil? It's critically important that we understand that. What is the pH of the soil? It's critically important that we understand that. And so we look at the plasticity of the soil. So these are the things that we have to know and the farmers have to know when they get ready to choose where to put their farm. Like everything else, you know, once you have chosen the site and you verified that the soil is of the kind of soil that will grow crops and plants, then you're about the business of preparing the soil for planting. Now, we always prepared our farms for planting in the spring. And so come April, we want the land ready for planting. That means at the end of March, and I'll get this now, March is cold and windy, but at the end of March, we start preparing that soil because when the spring comes in April, when we have all of the April showers, all of the rainy season, you want your soil, your plants in the ground on the first day of spring. It's critically important that we get that. And so then you do all of the preparations. You go by and we do what we call land the crop buy, and all of the soil is around the plants as they come up. And we spend an ample amount of time fighting grass. You know, grass is a plant and it grows extremely well. Sometimes it grows too well. And so we have to deal with that. And then we get all of the grass out and then we wait for the plants to do their thing. And Lord, we see that stalk coming up out of the ground. Farmers are going to be walking that field. They're going to be walking it every day looking for the first sign of a plant or leaf penetrating from the soil. That is a great day when you see things begin to sprout and to come up, and the seeds that you planted have germinated now. They have the heat, enough heat was there, and so those seeds now are bursting open and coming forth through the soil. Now, when you see that, you say that's a great day. We're going to have a great crop if the good Lord will bring us a certain amount of rain and a certain amount of sunshine. Then all we have to do, like nurturing a child or guarding against an infant, all we have to do is protect that plant now from all of the parasites that want to feed on it and destroy my crop. And so in Mississippi, back in the day, I know many of you heard about the trouble that farmers had with the boll weevil. He was a dirty, low-down parasite that would destroy your farm. And then nematodes, parasites in the soil attacking the roots of the plants. And we farmers are fighting with that every day. And you've got to have a certain amount of rain, as I mentioned. That's why we jumped to spring in the rainy season, because you have to have rain, and the plants need that to nurture and to grow. You fight the parasites, you did all of the things right, you expect a great crop. Let's just say that we had a great crop and the harvest was plentiful and we took all our products to the market, and all of the outlets, the farmers market and there's roadside, curbside vendors, they're selling their products.
and we're all eating healthy. You know, there was no McDonald's or Wendy's anywhere where I grew up. We didn't have any of that in the country. And so all we had was a garden, and that garden provided us with everything that we were going to need. We grew everything that we needed except flour. Flour was one of those odd things that you could not grow. You know, sugar was a commodity that was in scarce demand, but we had cane, we had sugar cane, and we made molasses, and molasses was known to sweeten a lot of things, and farmers used that. So we always know how important it is to protect that. Now we're going to talk about, after this commercial, I'm going to go to a break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to talk about, you know, what happens to the soil when we plant all of these plants on it, and they take all of the oxygen out of the soil, and what happens to our dear farmers. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this commercial.
Have you had your Earthblend coffee today? At Earthblend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup with Earthblend Coffee. To order, visit earthblendcoffee.co now.
We're back. This is Socrates Garrett Live. We're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, in the cradle of the Deep South. Mississippi, my hometown. I call it a town because in Mississippi we all know one another. You know, we have less than 3 million people in the entire state, so we get to know one another pretty well. And so that's why I call it a town. But today we've been talking about this Mississippi soil and how fertile it is, and how Mississippi was one of the richest states in the world. It's hard to believe. We've been on the bottom so long now, we don't recall. But Mississippi, because it produced cotton, because it had the Mississippi Delta, because it had the most fertile soil in the world, became an exporter to England and all up north and all of those places which are not blessed with great soil. And so from that reason, Mississippi was a very wealthy state, so wealthy and was able to produce so much from the great soil that it had until it didn't have enough workers to take advantage of the yield that the soil was given forth, and so introduced that horrible thing called slavery, because we needed workers down here to work the farms and the plantations. And we're going to talk about that at another time, but we want to talk about the soil itself and how it works. Now, after you've planted and harvested all of your vegetables and all of the cotton and all of the corn and all of the cane, then you now have put a lot of nitrogen in the soil. Nitrogen is not good, and that's why we can't use certain fertilizers. We can't use chicken manure, for example, because it's so highly concentrated with phosphorus and nitrogen until you can't use it as a fertilizer, because the plants can't grow from that base. Now, back in the day, we didn't have fertilizers like 1013.13. We didn't have all of those things to fertilize the crops with. So the farmers use a lot of cow manure. Now, cows are different than chickens. The manure from a cow produces great fertilizers for the garden and for your farm. It just didn't have enough of it because we had hundreds of acres of land, and you don't have enough ability to produce enough cow manure to serve as fertilizers other than your specialty crops, like your gardens,
which there you would use all you had from the farm. And so once that crop has been gathered, then we have the chore of trying to get all of the nitrogen out of the soil. Now keep in mind, go back to the 6th grade or so when they were teaching you chemistry, etc. Plants feed off of carbon monoxide and they give off oxygen. That is the cycle of life. We don't have enough plants to absorb all of the carbon that's in the air or the nitrogen that's in the soil, and so we have these critical climate changes because we're not protecting the atmosphere and the ozone layers because we're putting off too much carbon. Or, said another way, we don't have enough plants to keep up with the production that industry and others are producing in factories. And so we have this great debate that's going on now about climate change and what's causing it. And you have these programs now that'll give you carbon credits. If you would just reduce the emission of carbon monoxide into the atmosphere. Now, let me back up. I don't want to get confused here on carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. I don't want to get those two confused because one is coming from a car engine and one is coming in terms of what this plant is feeding on. So, but we have to understand this cycle is critically important that we get this. So the programs now will pay you and enhance you that if you will plant certain plants, longleaf pines, for example, if you will plant trees which will reduce the carbon imprint, we will pay you, and it's called carbon credits. And also USDA and NRCS, which has been a wonderful sponsor of this program, will keep its wetlands free so that we don't bother the soil and the places that our animals, our birds and our fish and our traveling geese have to stop somewhere on their long flight. And so they will pay you to lease them the wetlands so long as you agree not to plant anything there. So they're protecting the wildlife. All of this is critically important. And so we have this opportunity now here on this program. And I want to go back to finish up my thought a bit on preparing the soil. So once the crops have been planted and harvested, now we have all of this fertilizer that's in the ground, because all of your fertilizer is a nitrogen base, except when we could use cow manure over in our specialty crops in the garden. But if you go down there and you buy all of this triple 13, that's a nitrogen-based fertilizer. And yes, it is going to make that plant grow, but it renders the soil useless for the next crop. So what do we have to do? We have to fix that. Now, the most common way that we do that is that we'll plant a crop in the off season. If I am growing cotton in July, I'm expected to lay that cotton by early September, October. I'm supposed to be out of the field and the harvest is over. But the soil now is not right for the next year coming up. It's got too much nitrogen in the ground. So what do? We now have to come and we plant hay. We plant any kind of vegetation that will grow in the wintertime. You see, certain cotton won't grow in the wintertime, soybeans, etc. So, but hay will. And so we play that winter ride that you see the grass. It works in cold weather in the soil. And so we now have to plant hay. We plant hay twice. We want 2 harvestings of hay during our season. Why do I don't need that just because I can sell hay to the farmers in Texas that are experiencing the great drought. I need that because I got to pull the nitrogen out of my soil. So I plant hay in October, November, and I harvest that hay. It pulls the nitrogen out of the soil. I do it twice that year. Then the soil is ready to receive the plants in the next spring that's coming up, and you can now apply the nitrogen again to that soil to give you a great, great season. These are the things that we are talking about in soil conservation, and we're sharing with our farmers. And we're training podcast hosts every day to be able to go out and do on-site visits and talk to our farmers about climate-smart technology. Now, climate-smart can mean a lot of different things. All of the things I just talked about is climate-related in terms of when you plant, early spring, when do you harvest in October, when do you plant hay to get the nitrogen out of the soil in the wintertime. But there's also now, we did it in gardens because we had the land in the early periods. Farmers had plenty of land, so their garden was outside, specifically set aside for growing the things that you wanted to eat that year. Now, we don't have that kind of land, and most of our people are in the urban areas, so we now have to have climate-smart technology. So you see a lot of these greenhouses popping up all over the state, designed to give you, to protect you from the climate. They can be air conditioned. Some plants require air. They can be heated, keep the temperature sound inside of the greenhouse. You can have your irrigation in there, and you can grow all year long in your greenhouse. So you'll see a lot of that that's popping up all over the state. That's climate control technology. That's what that is. Now, greenhouses still take up a lot of space and a lot of land. So you don't see a lot of greenhouses in city limits. So you still have to have land to do that. So what you'll see now is you'll see this technology and this climate control technology showing you how to plant in pots, how to plant in your backyard, how to prepare the soil in tires, in buckets, in bathtubs. Anywhere that you can have the space, you can now grow your own food, enough for your family to feed you all winter long until the next planting season comes when you can get back outside, or if you have a small family, it'll serve you all year long in that capacity. So we're going to be talking about these things each and every week as we go along. We're going to do a lot of site visits. We're going to share you, talk to these farmers as we already have. We've been out to Footprint Farms and talked to Cindy Ayers Elliott out there. We've talked to Wade, who's got a beautiful farm up in Madison County. We go all up in the Delta talking to Willie Johnson about his farm up there. And some of the best people in the world. Farmers are the backbone of America. This has been Socrates Garrett Live, coming to you from We Believe Broadcast Studios. Our program is being broadcast all over the world in over 139 countries. You can catch us on Facebook, on YouTube. Subscribe to us. Send a shout out. Subscribe to the program. Follow us. Check us out on Instagram, on TikTok, X, and we now believe that Twitter is in the house. So check us out there. Until the next time, stay safe, protect the soil. Good day.